You're listening to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Sofeast Group. Hello, welcome to episode 286 of the podcast. Renaud today, pilot runs. It's a topic we haven't spoken about for, well, I was checking actually. It's been a good sort of couple of years or more, but actually not an unimportant topic.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's a must, basically. You develop a new product or you bring a product that is new to a factory. You get to go with a pilot first. You cannot go with a mass production run. And when I say a pilot, it might be several small production runs. And yeah, that's what a lot of people just don't want to understand, it seems. Yeah, that's an interesting topic.
Yeah, well, we're going to help that understanding today. Do you think that many companies, they go into this, let's say they're working with a manufacturer and they think they're ready for production, even though they're actually not? Like, is that on them, or is it the manufacturer sort of blowing smoke, as it were, or a bit of both?
In some cases, a bit of both. Yeah, a lot of people work maybe with a design firm or maybe internally with their staff, and and for specialist engineering resources, they outsource some of the work and they go through prototypes, and then they say, okay, here we have a fully functional prototype and we have the renderings and everything and some look good prototype, look like prototypes. Okay, that's exactly what we need in production. We could make it here on a small scale. Definitely can be made on a large scale. It's ready, right? So what they mean is we have finished the product design work. And what they're actually ready for is the next step. The next step is not mass production. The next step is making sure that it's been designed for manufacturing, making sure that it's been designed for assembly, making sure that it's been designed for compliance, these kind of things, for reliability, etc. For procurement, make sure that the components are not going end of life soon and come from suppliers that can be relied to do a good job, right? For this level of quality, for this quantity of like order amount, etc., right? And if they've done all of these type of reviews and so on, okay, great. Then ready for the next step. But the next step again is not mass production, right? It's different. So, I mean, we can talk about that, but they believe that it's ready for production because they have no clue what is coming up, right? And that's why we talked a lot in the past about the NPI process, the new product introduction process, because there's a lot of things inside, a lot of things in the process. Okay. Well, and then you ask if it's also the factory side. Well, if they work with a typical, I don't know, European factory, Japanese factory, etc., that has some experience in that general product category, no, the manufacturer will usually say, hey, you can go direct to mass production. We need to do this. Like, here's all the things that need to be done first, right?
Yeah.
You can go to mass production with that. But if they work with a typical Chinese factory, and if they keep saying, it's really urgent, we need to get on the market very soon, then the Chinese factory, again, typical Chinese factory, right? Some of them are very good and don't do that. But the typical Chinese factory will really hear, okay, these guys really want to go fast. Speed is the most important. They're willing to cut corners on everything else as long as it's fast. And they don't want to hear about all the stuff that has to happen. Like, we got to kind of do it in the background, more or less, chabudo, as we say in China. We cannot tell them this is the long list of things we need, because otherwise we just lose the business. They'll just go someplace else, right? They'll just go to another supplier that would say, How? Yeah. Okay, send the money. Right? Here's how much it costs because we need to make tooling. That's the price. And we need to order this long lead time component in large quantity. We need to buy it right now. Hey, it's $300,000, send the money now, and so on. So they kind of hook the customer like that also. Okay, you want to go fast? No problem. Here's the next step. And send the money. And once you've sent the money, well, we're not going to send it back to you. Like we made tooling specifically for your product. You know, we cannot use that for anything else. So of course we cannot send you the money back. Oh, we bought these components specifically for your order. Like what do you want us to do with that? You send the money, we're not going to send it back to you. This type of situation. So it's all about making the sale, right? And keeping the customer. Like
Mm.
we'll figure out later, like at one point, there might come some type of come to Jesus meeting, like, hey, you didn't tell us about that. Like, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm not happy you didn't tell us. And okay, hey guys, you told us to go really fast, and we told you what was the next step. Like, no time to plan even. You were so insistent that everything had to be fast, right? So they have this excuse. You can always come back with, hey, you insisted so much that it was urgent. It's,
Yep.
now, the mature, experienced project manager in a company that develops a new product, right? The experienced project manager will say, hey, timing is essential, but there's a certain structure that we have to follow. There's some go-no-go stages, etc., that we cannot skip. Okay, so within that structure, how fast can you go? Like, we don't want you to make a non-compliant product. Okay. So yeah, we get to maybe work with the testing lab to do some pre-scan, Then after the tooling is made and everything, then send the products for validation testing that, okay, it's all compliant. Then you can do self-declaration, or maybe it has to be a certification, etc. Okay,
Yeah.
great. It has to be done like that, step by step. Otherwise, you take very big risks. Now, sometimes they say timing is so essential, we will take some risks. Yes, we will order some long lead time components, but first we sign a contract, and then these things, the long lead time components, we pay. But then, if at any point we decide to switch to another customer, to another manufacturer, well, we can request to pick up this material, at any time because it's ours and we've paid for it. Okay.
Yeah.
For example. So yes, they will take some risks, but they will manage the risk. Okay. They will manage the risk. They might say, well, the full product design hasn't really been validated yet. Okay. If we were conservative, we would do another round of design and prototyping and testing, etc., before we decide to go into tooling fabrication. Let's say there's a custom design, maybe metal part that needs to be die cast or whatever. Plastic injection molded that's very, very common, etc. Okay, so that requires tooling, actually expensive tooling. So if you go into tooling fabrication before you have fully validated the whole product design, what's the risk? The risk is that you make the tooling and then you find out, oh, here that needs to be a bit more round, and here we need to change the closing mechanism, blah blah blah, right? And then you might have to do tooling revisions, and that's not cheap, and sometimes it's not fast at all. Okay, and it reduces the lifetime of the mold because in many cases you have to weld some extra material. That part of the mold will not be as strong, so requires some extra maintenance over time, more likely to create quality issues, etc., etc. And yeah, it's not cheap. Okay, so You might need to go into tooling revisions. You might, in some cases, have to scrap the tooling and start over, right? So people, we have some customers that come and say, well, timing is very important, and I'm willing to take some risks. And then we explain, okay, so the risk, here's a few examples of risks you can accept to take, maybe, but here's the typical implications of these risks, right? So, for example, you might have to make the tooling again. That leads to higher costs. So they say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I know, I'm willing to take the risk. It's probably like only 5% chance, blah blah blah. But also, if you make the tooling again, that's another 5, maybe 6 weeks extra, right? So you take a risk to go faster, but the fact that you take that risk means there's a certain percentage of likelihood that you need to do some big rework loop. Okay, and that big rework loop is actually going to make everything longer. And we've looked at some projects where people were like, no, like you get to take the shortcut here, the shortcut there, that the risk. Okay, we accept it. Sort of we feel lucky, right? Okay, but otherwise, it would take whatever. It would take 4.5 months to get there. Oh no, how cannot. We already sold some stuff. We're already late, even before coming to you. Like, we cannot do that. Okay, like try to see what you can do in 2.5 months, 3 months. Okay, then we have to make shortcuts here. Okay. And then we looked after that at the real timelines. Well, these shortcuts, some of them led to issues, right? Especially when you take risks on everything. For sure, some of them are going to come back and bite you. Well, the rework loops were so big that instead of, say, 4.5 months, it's 7 months in the end, right? In some cases. So, and people just cannot accept that. It seems like when they all in the mind of, hey, no, we gotta go fast. We cannot do everything by the rules. We don't care about all the lessons learned. We don't care about the tried and true process, the proven process and everything. No, we're gonna go like cowboys, and we're gonna find a way. Now we still need, we cannot keep everything. Still need to make sure the product is reliable, and still need to make sure the product is compliant. Still need to get the tooling made, and we still need to get all the checklists and the quality standard and everything. And we still need to get assembly done properly. So we still need to prepare the work instructions for the workers and the testing stations. And so of course we need some like whatever fixtures, jigs, etc. Okay, there's certain things they know they should not skip, but when they think they can be faster by trying to plan better, and they try to take too many risks, in the end, it's as long or longer than the normal process would have taken. Okay. Now, you do the normal process, you take a risk on 1 or 2 things, that might be fine. It might be faster. But if you start to accumulate, need to take a risk here and take a risk here and here and here and here, like it's going to take longer, and you're going to pay more, and you're going to have more unpleasant surprises and more, I don't know, let's say you're in the US, more long nights about brainstorming how to fix the issues with the team in China, right? People don't really get that. And then the pilot runs, well, that's a big one they want to skip. No, let's go direct. I already pre-sold 2,000 pieces. I get to deliver it. And then we need to tell them, okay, well, the pilot runs, some of the pieces will be okay, and the compliance and reliability testing will already be known at some point. So you know that it's okay, can be delivered to people. But there's a big risk, especially if they've been reworked. You don't want to sell that. And then they're like, no, okay. if you really need to do a pilot run of whatever 50 pieces, then I want all these 50 pieces, so I sell them right away to the people who, you know, who are most impatient. And we're like, no, 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 like you cannot do that. First, we make 50 pieces doesn't mean there's 50 good pieces. Or
Mm.
we need to do a lot of extra work and everything. You know, the process is not mature. There might be a lot of problems with the components. There might be problems with, I don't know, the testing stations, etc. So maybe 50 pieces, maybe 10 of them have not been reworked or 20. And still, it's not really advisable to sell them. Oh, no, okay, whatever. We need as many as we can, you know. And then maybe a second pilot run, maybe make 100 pieces. Oh, I really want all the 100 pieces this time. Uh, okay, well, but the problem is you do that. Some of these products have been reworked. I mean, again, the process is not very mature. You're going to have a high return rate, a high complaint rate from the users. Okay. Like, this is all at your own peril because we warned you like 10 times. Yeah, typically, we warn them many times about the issues, right?
Yeah.
So you might get some bad reviews just because you got too much in a hurry. Now, how expensive is that when you start with some bad reviews, right? So that's
Well,
the
yeah.
typical kind of psychological difficulties, let's say.
Mm. Well, mindset. Pilot run doesn't equal you're going to end up with products that you can sell. But I can understand why companies who are in a
Yeah.
hurry might think that,
Yeah.
especially if we're not talking about one or two. If you're talking about a whole run of tens or more of products, then yeah, you might be thinking, well, okay, those have been made now. That's good. We're making
Yeah.
progress, and we are making progress, but we're not making progress in mass production yet because this is the whole
Right.
point of this is the whole point. You were talking a bit about the risks, right? I want to dig
Mm.
into that for a couple of minutes, if I may, right? Let's say you're cutting too many corners and you're going into mass production half cocked, as we would say in the UK, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
kind of undercooked. What
Mm-hmm.
sort of risks are we looking at? I suppose some of them are common sense, but it's worth going through.
Well, let's say, I mean, we've seen some really crazy cases. Some customers come to us after a failed NPI with a Chinese supplier.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really like, what were they thinking? Okay, so one company came to us and they say, "Oh, I already paid for the tooling and everything from the other supplier, but then we there's all these issues and we cannot even use that tooling. We had to redesign everything." Okay,
Mm,
well, this skipped design for manufacturing. This skipped, the final sort of validation of at least the module, maybe not the full product, but even like just at the module level, they they skipped some very important reviews. So they went into tooling way too early, and then the tooling had to be scrapped, and we had to make it again. Sometimes people say, "Well, I have the tooling. Yeah, this is okay. We can use it, but it's really lots of issues." Okay, then we need to go into some kind of refurbishment because there's so many issues, right? And usually they need to accept something that is less than ideal because again, they're in a hurry, they're already late, they already worked with a supplier that messed the whole thing up, they're way behind schedule. They yeah, they don't want to do too many revisions of the tooling, right? So they have to accept something. So that's also risks also means that it costs you more, take you more time, and
yeah.
also the product in the end will not be as good. Okay, so for example, if the tooling on plastic parts is not great, you're gonna have whatever shrink marks or scratches, things, some really ugly flow lines and things like that, or parts that break too easily and so on. Okay, so it's, yeah, it's difficult sometimes to explain all these risks because it's just risks, right? It's like you don't do that, you don't follow the proven process, like the risk of bad stuff is going up quite a bit. But what is the bad stuff? right? They will, so what's the risk exactly? Like, I become exposed to what bad stuff? Well,
Mm.
could be this, could be this, could be that, but we don't really know. The whole point is that you you skip the steps that provide you assurance, maybe not 100% assurance, but high assurance of going in the right direction, not having any unpleasant surprises. But you go out, you go off trails, like, good luck. Like you're skiing and you go off trails. Well,
Yep.
the ski station doesn't have to tell you, oh, you might fall off a cliff, you might fall into some kind of holes, you might get lost in the forest, you
Be in an
might,
avalanche.
yeah, right, an avalanche, some super steep slopes, all frozen, and then you fall on some rocks, and then you will stay there until night and you will freeze to death. And we will find your body 3 months later when the,
Mm.
the, the snow melts. Like, they don't have to say all this stuff. They just say, do not go, right?
Yeah.
If you still go, well, too bad for you. Even your insurance company for health insurance will not cover you and all these kind of things, right?
Mm.
But when you do manufacturing, yeah, there's no, it's different. It's different. It's the project plan anyway has to be tailored to the project.
Mm.
And then the customers, there's some back and forth, of course. The customer has a certain appetite for, maybe going fast, or maybe reducing the level of investment, keeping the bit of design freedom or whatever. Like, oh, we'll don't do the tooling in hard steel. Maybe just do it in soft steel because we'll probably make some changes anyway soon, and it's fine. Versus, oh, we need to ramp up very, very fast. Okay, we need to make the tooling with a lot of cavities, but then there's extra risk, right? If you want to do tooling revisions, well, um, that's going to take longer, and so on and so
Mm.
forth, and so on and so forth. So yeah, people feel that okay, it's tailored for me, so I can request, whatever I want. But no, 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 no. There's really some big, big no-nos, basically, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah, and then we go back to the MPI process again, and I mean it's something that we follow, and we've developed our MPI process of 6 phases. I'm thinking at Agilian where we are, manufacturing and designing and developing products for customers, and
Mhm.
these it's kind of like if you're a customer, if you're a company and you're going into manufacturing your products, who do you trust? Do you go into it with the mindset of I've got to cut corners and I've got to not worry about the risks and we've got to do this really quickly, or do you speak to a manufacturer who says, look, we understand it's got to be as fast as possible, but you need to understand that these risks are potentially lying in wait, and we've got to do everything we can to ensure that we get your product to production with the lowest risks possible because of whatever reasons. There'll be many reasons, and we've discussed some of them today. So, I- as a potential manufacturer, if you're listening right now, maybe there's got to be a bit of a mindset shift, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. So having this kind of discussion with a very pushy customer, sometimes leads to like, what you're asking for? Like, there's no way we can do a good job. So, sorry, we cannot take this project, right? Sometimes it needs to come down to that. In companies where you have, let's say, creative salespeople who will do anything to get the customer, engaged and hooked, and then, oh, it's fine, they will not go away. Then we can we can show them that things are not moving as fast as they would like, little by little, and then at one point they would be upset and blah blah blah. But anyway, they cannot go away, right? There's a lot of companies that seem to do that. Yeah, I'm not going to comment on them, but that's not what we do. It's,
Right.
of course, if you cannot be reasonably confident that you can do a good job and hit the timelines, then that's not a plan. It's a wish. It's a wish list, but we cannot call it a plan, right? So uh, sometimes maybe we call it a roadmap, but that's not a plan. You put the timing you want on it is just a roadmap in your mind, but on our side, there's no commitment to that. That's not our plan, right? Yeah, it can be a little bit difficult to communicate sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Let's bring it back into pilot runs then and wrap it up. So at the start, we talked about, the pilot run being essential. So it's not just some sort of a test that we've got to do. It's not optional unless you really want to increase your risks a lot, right? Even if you've got a fully working prototype that looks amazing, it looks exactly as you want it and works exactly as you want it to, actually, you're probably not ready for production. Well, almost certainly not. You'll need to go through that pilot run process.
Mm.
And that involves quite a number of, maybe we could call them pre-production checks within the pilot run.
Oh, well, how to say? So first is not pilot run, except for let's say the simplest of products is more pilot runs, right? So
Yeah.
you do, let's say there's custom parts that need tooling. Okay, the tooling comes out, the trials, blah, blah, blah. At one point you do an engineering build. It's some kind of pilot run, but usually it's not all with production intent processes. It's more like still some prototyping, a prototyping approach to assembly, let's say. Okay, then here already you need to follow a certain approach, and you need to test it. You need to start to do things a little bit like production intent processes were possible, etc., etc. And then the engineers sort of deepen their understanding of the manufacturing process, of the testing process, of the quality standard, because they get feedback from the customer, etc. Uh, and then at one point, okay, the tooling is confirmed and everything. Then you go into pilot runs that are really handled like mass production with the same kinds of people, with the same equipment, and so on. And you work with the component suppliers, so the ones making custom design parts. Yeah, they have to make their own pilot runs. And what are the issues they have? What is the yield? Like, do they have to scrap 30% of the parts? Well, that's a big problem. Okay. That will be reflected in the cost at one point or another. Maybe it's 30% bad this time, next batch 10%, and then the batch after is 50%. Maybe it's might be quite variable like that. So if you can have them make several pilot runs, again, totally production intent processes, that's great for learning about the risks and the issues and so on, and working on improvements. I mean, and then in assembly, final assembly and testing and packaging, you basically you do it on assembly tables and everything, all the same with the work instructions. The inspectors have their checklist, have their golden sample, and so on and so forth. You do everything as much as possible like mass production. And that's how you see the issues come up. What triggers rework or scrap? What are the sources of quality issues? What slows down the line? What are people maybe fumbling with some kind of operation, afraid of hurting themselves maybe, or having to try and retry 3 or 4 times just because it's hard to get it right, or very easy to make a mistake just by presenting the part in the wrong orientation or something like that. Okay, then you look at all this and then you try to think of process improvements to avoid it. Okay, so I forgot what your question was, but there's a lot of things behind it, right? There's a lot of things behind it. There's a lot of things related to the suppliers, and building the BOM with suppliers that are qualified, that have accepted the quality standard, that have accepted whatever the contractual requirements and so on and so forth, right? Maybe building backup suppliers, so all kinds of things behind that.
Yeah.
I think is beyond the scope of the this episode because it can be pretty heavy.
Yeah, I mean, that does answer the question actually, because it's just to give an insight into what's really going to be included because it's so
Mhm.
important. But yes, the scope of this episode is to kind of alert everybody to the importance of this process. So yeah, I mean, the pilot run process of pilot runs in plural for sure,
Mm,
and to get an idea of why this is something that you don't want to be rushing or skipping because it's
mm,
at a very crucial point of your project where you are starting to get towards mass production. So I think that we've gone through that pretty well. Now, I do remember, like on the Agilian website, we actually have a page explaining how we can help people to go faster whilst keeping risks to the minimum for that particular project specifically. So I
or not
think
really
that'll
the
be,
minimum, but to a level that is acceptable to them. Let's say.
yeah, for that project. I mean, because it's going to vary per customer, right? So that'll be a good page to share in this
Mhm.
for some homework, if you like, if you want to dig into this kind of thing a little bit more. So at that point, we'll call it a day, Renaud, and next week be back with another episode.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review, and share because it will really help others discover us too.